intelligently adding volume to maximize muscle growth. That's what this video is about. So building on the last video where I discussed how I establish training intensity first on a low volume approach, and then I just vary the volume for different body parts to make sure we are at least progressing. A lot of you will be sat there thinking, that's great, Faz, but I can do more. And this is what this video is about. Doing more than just the minimum. That's what it's about. If you have the intention to do more, if you are willing to do more, let's talk about that. It's like the tanning example again. Okay, so to develop a tan, you have to have a sufficient degree of sun, so sufficient intensity. And then after that, the more you're out there, the better your tan is, up to a point where you're out there too much and you get burnt. And it's the same thing with volume. So you can accelerate your results, you can accelerate your gains by doing more, as long as you add the volume in intelligently and make sure you are cognizant of different body parts and their requirements. So let's look at how you intelligently add volume, assuming you have the desire to see more gains and you have already established training intensity. So here's how I class volume loads. First of all, I think you have a volume load where you typically don't grow. Now, for me, I need at least 8 sets to grow. So 8 sets on my quads is probably the minimum necessary I need to grow. 8 sets wouldn't really grow my chest or my back at all. So here, volume load where you don't grow. Then across here, there's a pretty broad range of volume loads where you grow and you grow very well. Now, after that, you have the volume load where you're still growing, but you're slowly but surely starting to get snapped up. And I discussed that in the last video. There is a point where you can still see muscular progress, but you're slowly starting to pick up aches and pains. And then after that, you have volume loads where you probably aren't growing and you're definitely getting snapped up. So it's 4 different stages. Volume loads where you're not growing, a broad range now, volume where you are growing and everything is hunky-dory. Then volume loads where you're growing but are starting to get snapped up. And then the final one is you're just redlining it and it's way too much. So for those of you who are interested in the absolute most growth, the rough idea is to try and maximize the stress on the muscles while minimizing the stress on other systems in the body. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about things like joints, ligaments, nervous system, spinal loading, axial loading, all these things. And so what happens is, as we develop more of this bodybuilding sort of mindset, we tend to fit into the classic bodybuilder paradigm of some heavy work, but then a lot of very joint-friendly volume. And also using a variety of different reps because the variety is good. A high degree of exercise variety as well, because that's always good. It helps to alleviate the stress so you can do more. And just a lot of variety in general. Louis Simmons famously said, bodybuilding is the conjugate system, because you're always doing lots and lots of various different things. You're varying things a lot. And the goal of variety is to ensure your body can do more. And the goal of hypertrophy training is, if you are interested in the most growth, is to maximize the stress on the muscle while minimizing the stress everywhere else. So the rest, once you've done that, once you have the most maximal stress and you want, assuming you want to experiment with that, and I think you should if you have the inclination to, the rest of it is up to you. Make sure you are in a small surplus so that the majority of that is going towards muscle growth. You are partitioning that food correctly because you have such a strong stimulus of growth. And then make sure you're sleeping well, which also helps in the same thing. And you're resting enough and you're trying to keep stress as low as is possible. That is it, really. So essentially, from a broad top-down perspective, that is how you get the most out of your bodybuilding program. Maximize the muscular stress, minimize stress on the other areas of the body so that you can do as much as you need. And then make sure you're taking care of your other factors. That is the way to ensure good bodybuilding progress. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of hypertrophy specialists tend to really disagree with a lot of the barbell-centric, very basic programs is because it goes against all of that. What you're doing is you're using exercises and training setups which do put a lot of stress on the tendons and ligaments, which do have you doing repetitive exercises, which keep straining the same movement patterns, which do have you using the same rep ranges, which again stresses the body more. So you're going against what makes a good hypertrophy program. That is why, past the point where you're a beginner and intermediate, it's typically not a great idea to continue with some of these very basic barbell-centric programs. All right, so I'm going to call it there, but hopefully that was useful and isn't as an idea for really identifying what the broad requirements are to maximize hypertrophy, because a lot of you will be really interested in that area. And great, it's a great goal. It's good to be jacked for all ages, whether you're young, whether you're old. Hopefully that video was useful for you. That is broadly how I apply this to my clients after I've established the training intensity, which is what I discussed in the video a couple of days back. I'll call it there, and I will speak to you in the next one.